Welcome to the Monkcast. You see what I did there, Wes? My name is Kate Holterhoff. I'm a senior analyst at RedMonk. I have Wes Bos, co-host of Syntax, with me today. Wes is an accomplished developer and educator, and I am super stoked to have him here on the pod. So, Wes, welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. Excited to be here.
So, it's January. Everybody, all the thought leaders, they're out here with their predictions. You and Scott Talinsky did one. I was on board. You talked about CVEs. You mentioned some of the React issues this past year, RPCs, all this stuff, super important. But what interested me the most from your predictions was the design thing. So you argue design's making a comeback. I want to hear more about that. Why is that, your first prediction?
Yeah. The design world, I feel like the last couple of years it kind of shifted. It was very important like early on, because people were putting out sites and apps that were not usable. Like design is very important in making sure that your application is usable and friendly and people get the most out of it. And then also just like in terms of like brand, how you portray yourself on the internet. And I feel like we had a couple years where a lot of these UI frameworks came out and a lot of people could just put together very good looking websites. And now that we have AI being able to generate a lot of the code, they're cranking out like very usable, very decent looking websites. I think that is very important. And now we sort of like have this like baseline of, with very little effort, you can make it fairly usable. You can npm install shadcn or grab some Tailwind components and tweak them a little bit, and it looks like half decent, like pretty usable, which is great. That the baseline for everything is no longer just awful. The baseline for everything is pretty good. So now we're at a spot where it's like, okay, but what's your differentiator? If it is so easy to get a baseline of doable, how can we now explore? There's kind of two sides to it, right? There's a usability side of, now that it is not so hard and not so much work to do this basic stuff, which is just styling it up. I think we have a bit more time to spend on the usability. So like I could spend a whole bunch of time in like, what does this photo picker upload UI look like? Or this drop down filter where I can multi-select other things. Like that might have been a absolutely massive undertaking in the past, where now it's a little bit more doable. So people are starting, at least what I'm starting to see is like the products that are like better are starting to put a lot more time into the UX, the usability design of their actual product. And then you have like the other side, which is like this Lando Norris website that came out a couple months ago, and it's just absolutely showstopper, jaw-dropping, amazing. There's just like, it's absolutely full of cutting edge web stuff, 3D stuff you have never seen on the web before. And that aspect it's a differentiator, right? Because if everything on the web starts looking exactly the same, I don't necessarily know if there's too much wrong with everything looking exactly the same, right? Like if you open up Twitter, you open up Threads, you open up Instagram. Sometimes I forget which app I'm on because they all look exactly the same. And I think a lot of people like that because it's familiar to me. I know how to use it. But from like a brand perspective of like, we need to have like a showstopper. You need to stop people from scrolling. You need people to go to this website and check it out and enjoy it. I think that's a huge way that people can differentiate themselves which is just these beautiful next generation websites. And I feel like we're starting to see a lot more of that.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate that rundown. So for RedMonk's website, I've written a little bit about the shadcn issue and the fact that a lot of these like, AI tools where you can crank out a website real quick, Lovable, and even UI look component libraries all have shadcn under the hood. And the reason is that this library allows you to cut out snippets of code. And so it's just like this revenge of copy pasta where models have access to this, and so they're able to just, import them very easily. But I suspect that there's more going on than just the rise of shadcn and the fact that it's under the hood of all these tools that are allowing us to have baseline UI experiences across a lot of different websites. You mentioned Raycast, for instance, on Syntax. So I guess, is there anything else that I'm missing that has led to the homogenization of these websites historically beyond ChadCN?
Um, I think it's just like developers don't want to change things.
Yeah,
And we've seen this. This is the Shadcn is it's not new with Shadcn, right? We had it with
yeah,
Bootstrap, we had it with Foundation, we had it with jQuery UI,
yeah,
we had it with a lot of the Tailwind stuff, which is why a lot of the AI stuff is generated purple. It's just that like a lot of developers who don't necessarily have an eye for design, um, they'll you make something and you just make a bigger mess and it doesn't look good, and it's much easier just to slap this thing in there. And the funny thing is that like all of these tools that we've had for these UIs, they're meant to be able to change. They're set up so that you can have a basis, but you can change it, but almost nobody tweaks them too much where you can almost just see what a website is using off the bat. So to answer your question was like, is there something else to this type of thing? I think
yeah,
it's just simply like people. There's limited time for these
yeah.
types of things, and if you can slap this UI on it, it actually looks pretty good, and it's significantly better than what like what a developer would have just scratched together themselves. So I think that that's the important bit there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know if you are subscribed to the Pragmatic Engineer, but Gergely Orris's latest newsletter came out and was actually talking about design systems. And I loved the example that he used in there, where if you don't use something like that, your app will look like a college project. Like it just there's a certain feel if you don't have everything unified across the site,
Yeah,
and that it meets these expectations that the user has.
it's
But
all just
yeah.
bodged together. And on the podcast, we often talk about like rot as well, or things that drift. If you
Oh.
don't have like a design system or something in place, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this looks good and this will look good here, and then I don't know, over 2 or 3 years, you start like your your UI starts to drift, it starts to rot, and then you've just got this mishmash of different styles in there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Yeah, and it seems like as apps are created in this more ephemeral way, as we move into this AI, whatever's coming down the road, that's
Yeah.
probably going to become more and more true. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned the Lando Norris website. For folks who haven't seen it, and you've done a ton of great videos and content around this already. So definitely check out the Syntax YouTube channel and things where you're talking about this website. But for folks who just don't have the time, what is the TLDR? Why is it such a cool web experience?
Yeah, there's a lot of neat ways that they portray all the information that needs to get across, right? So like they have a
Yeah,
gallery of all the helmets and just like the shape around the helmet, the way that it reacts when you hover over each of them. The races have like a 3D track modeled, so it's like kind of spinning around. And it's just this immersive experience that makes you want to stay on the site and just kind of keep scrolling around, going through all the different little bits. And like certainly he could have just put together a very basic website, but that's not the brand of Lando Norris, right? He's the absolute best,
yeah,
and everything that he does is an extension of his brand, right? And every little bit from the little card hover, the Bezier curves, the easings, the edges, we hover over a link and the text has a really neat effect. All of that stuff took a ton of time. Like simply just the one thing of hovering over a text effect, like we recreated it ourselves, and it probably took at least an hour or 2 hours to absolutely nail, right? And that's just
wow,
like 1% of it. So obviously a lot of care went into this website, and everybody talked about it. It worked. It did
yeah.
exactly. I'll tell you right now. I don't watch racing. I
I
don't.
was wondering if you're an F1
I had
fan.
no idea who this guy was.
Yeah,
And obviously, people are like, "Oh, this is Lando Norris. Like, he's huge, absolutely massive. Like, you're an idiot if you don't know who he is." But like, that just goes to show that his brand pushed outside of his circles even further. And now I know who he is. I saw his toy at Costco the other day. I hear about him on TV. It obviously worked, right?
yeah. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, and I'm curious about this. So so you mentioned that the internet kind of blew up around this site. I definitely saw a few things. How do you keep up on what's considered good design? I mean, I know there's like newsletters and stuff, but like, how did you find this?
Um, I keep my ear like pretty close to the ground
Yeah.
on like design Twitter, just what's going on. I find if
Okay.
you interact with a lot of design Twitter, the algo will start feeding you a lot more of it.
Okay.
People tag me in it. That's maybe not necessarily a great tip for the audience, but
Yeah.
there's also like awards. I know like I think
Oh,
Framer's coming out with awards. Several websites that will have like web design awards, and it used to be a really big thing in like the CSS world. And for a long time, it just turned into this like here's a photo of like someone wearing Nikes and then a button over top, and like there's a beautiful website. It was just big photos
yeah.
and buttons over top of them for a long time. But the computers are getting better. Now people are really pushing into this 3D space. Uh,
Yeah.
Basically, I think anytime something is really cool, you're gonna hear about it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if you had any recs in terms of like newsletters or things where folks are just like following
People
this
always
and
people always ask me that, and I say like
yeah.
I am the source, like listen to syntax, follow me, because I've got all these different like if feeds
Yeah.
of like software updates and whatnot, and then I have a lot of people I follow on Twitter, but like at least I it's hard to it's hard to keep up, and my recommendation is follow somebody who does that as their job so that you can just be mama birded all the stuff.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I mean, that helps though. Like social media, it sounds like
Yeah.
is a big way of doing this. Okay. Very cool. All right. So this gets to my second point, which I think is so interesting. So you had mentioned the fact that a lot of developers aren't interested in really thinking about the design thing. Like they want to be handed a system, or they just feel like that's not where their talents lie, or they want to work on like, I don't know, the business logic or something. Um, but that's not always the case. There's a lot of front end engineers, especially, who think of themselves as sort of designers. So, Wes, I'm interested. Do you self identify as a designer?
Yes.
I
I
love
would I would
that.
say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
design,
man.
and for people who are like actual designers, they don't like that. But like
Oh, no.
I've been like I started my career off doing design. I would do
Yeah.
t-shirts and album art. I was doing print very early on. Um and like I consider myself primarily a developer, but everything I build out, I do all the design for as well. And it's certainly not like there's another level to it of like somebody who is spending time doing UX research and all of that. There's another level of like it looks cool and it's extremely usable. I think there's another level I'm not at there, but I do consider myself a designer, and I love to enjoy a nice user interface.
Yeah. No, I think that comes across not only with your feelings about like choosing whether to use dark mode or light mode on a website, which I found very interesting, but also, yeah, I mean, you could just your enthusiasm for the design of these web experiences just comes across really clearly to me. And I think that's really exciting because I feel that way too. But I think another thing that's interesting. So back when I was a front end engineer, if the engineering team was overextended, the designers would sometimes spin up their own websites on like Webflow. And we're talking like 5 years ago. So this is,
Yeah.
ancient history. But now that we're in this AI vibe coding era, I know that this is only going to be happening more and more, and it's evolving. So I think that we're seeing these roles really smush together in
Oh yeah.
exciting ways. Yeah. But at the same time, I think what's so cool too is that now that we have these AI tools to do a lot of the thinking for us, we're able to use more sophisticated tools. So you had said on this predictions podcast about becoming a mathematician in order to use some of the new tools, and AI will do that for you now. So it just opens up all these new aesthetic opportunities that designers and front end engineers weren't able to access before. So I think that's just like really cool, where we have this meeting of not only just, oh, this is pretty, this is just the superficial wrapping on whatever is actually happening in the back end, but also like, this is hard. This is difficult
Yeah.
stuff. And now we're able to do it in ways we couldn't before.
Yeah, the AI is really allowing people to get out of their lane. You're able to like eat off other people's
Like that.
plates. And designers love that because like designers hate having to interface with like a dev who just like won't implement their crazy idea that they had. So now that they can push a little bit more into that, and then like I feel the same way as well. Like the amount of like C sharp and C++ I've been writing in the last like year or so, doing hardware projects. I'm dipping into like Swift, some code I've never written. It's really broadening the areas that anyone is able to dip into, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily like that because it's like, well, I've spent my entire career understanding how this like memory management in the browser works, and this is what I'm an expert in. I think there's still space for those people as well. But for people who just want to get stuff done, these tools are so great for being able to expand past your lanes.
Wow. I like that metaphor. Makes a lot of sense to me. Um, yeah, I think it's so interesting how I'm seeing roles evolve and morph into new ones. And gosh, I don't know. Who knew that the word vibe coding was going to stick around so long? But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. We're all just vibing now. And being able to use like Nano Banana to like also like illustrate a lot of our, I don't know, ideas. It's extending into everything. It's PowerPoints. It's the whole thing. Yeah. So we're all becoming designers, is what I'm saying. Whether or not you self-identify as one, the capability is I don't know.
Yeah.
It's opened
Though
up.
the one thing that is not there is creativity and taste. Like
That's
those
good.
things are
Yeah.
cannot be AI'd. I think like the AI can help you come up with ideas and maybe push into areas you weren't necessarily thinking about, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be good if you don't know why it is good. And the people that have that creativity, like the Lando, Norris, the devs behind that, and the designers behind that, and then the people that have just good taste, um, whether you're designing an API or whether you're actually designing something that's visual.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Super interesting. So I want to hear more about the performance issue with the Norris website. So, one of the things I think was so interesting is historically, when we would see these interactive, unusual sort of experiences, JavaScript heavy websites, they would be very laggy. And that is just not the case with the Lando Norris website. And you spend some time talking about that. I think it's interesting, too, that you sort of made the offhand comment that there's no, it's not using like a framework, it's not using React.
Hmm.
There's a lot of libraries, but I thought that was I was wondering if you consider that like a signal because we always talk about how laggy, especially on old devices, a React website is a spa, right?
Yeah.
And here we have something that is not using a framework at all, isn't laggy, and is doing something completely different. How do you? I don't know. Can you square that? Like, does that tell us anything about where we're going with spas in the future?
Uh I don't think so because like the
Okay.
Lando site is a spa, and I think if the Lando site was done
Okay.
in React, it
Yeah.
would still have been fast. The reason the Lando site would be fast, and the reason why sites are laggy is generally not because of the framework that it's built in. People love to
Okay.
like throw it on copious amounts of JavaScript and whatnot,
Sure.
but like that's typically not the problem. The problem typically is at like a rendering. You can make a website slow at many things, right? It could be
Mm-hmm.
network sensitivity. It could be like responding to inputs. But the folks that made the Lando site really understand. In their case, it was mostly rendering performance of like how do you paint this thing to the screen in order to make sure that it is as fast as possible. So like one thing that the Lando site does is you'll see there's not drop shadows on anything. If you put a drop shadow on absolutely everything, the browser needs to compute that opacity. You've got
Mm-hmm.
things stacked on top of things, and now it needs to figure out there's two different layers, and I have to re-render both of them. What does it look like when it's peering through? Or is there a bunch of blend modes that are happening between the twos? How often are you re-rendering these things? Caching, assets, all of that type of stuff, and the reason why the Lando site is fast is simply just like the devs behind it are like really good. They know a lot about performance and they spend a lot of time fussing with it.
Yeah. Did you reach out to the team that built it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So once I posted the video, I got a couple DMs from the different devs on it. We did try and have them on the podcast, but they'd have to go through the Lando team and get approval on it, and nothing really came of that. But
Okay.
yeah, they gave me a lot of little insights as to like why things
Ooh.
were like that. Part of it was just like this is just the restraints that we had, and then part of it was just like, yeah, we know we spent a lot of time fussing with the performance of how these things work.
Oh, man. Well, that's very cool. I didn't realize that, but that makes sense. I know some other folks got on the bandwagon and tried to, like, rebuild it, vibe code Lando's
Yeah,
site, and see how far they could get, things like that, but yeah, I mean, it was clear that you had really dug into, yeah, some of the
yeah.
specifics, the
Like
libraries.
one thing that they did, I remember talking to them is on iOS with WebGL, that's the 3D stuff. On iOS,
Yeah,
you're able to send a lot of the models right to the graphics chip on the phone, which has much better performance apparently than actually running it like in WebGL directly with like PNG images. So like when
yeah.
it is supported, they had this special file format that they were able to send directly to the chip, you know, and that kind of like trickiness is generally packaged up into like a framework that would just take care of that like lower level heavy lifting for you. So we'll probably start to see frameworks and whatnot that take care of that for you, because like I think your average dev is not going to go to the lengths of like the helmet animation alone is like 6 or 7 different layers all on top of each other in 3D space, right?
Wow.
And then you would have to have double those because they're different formats for iOS versus other browsers.
So I guess let's maybe talk a little bit about the money part of this. I can't remember where I had heard this, but somewhere I saw the number that the Lando Norris site was like a $50,000 website. Was that? Can you confirm that? Is that? Am I just
Um,
making that up?
I never got any numbers from them,
Okay. Okay, that's fair enough.
but
We could leave it
like
vague.
I'm just thinking like 50 grand. That's a lot of money, but it also seems kind of low because like they had
Yeah.
like imagine I think they probably had like 5 devs on it. You know,
Yeah.
if you've got 5 devs at I don't know what even if you even they're 100,000 developer $100,000 a year, which is probably low for a developer of this caliber, probably very low. You know, like that
Yeah.
50 grand, that's just a couple weeks of dev, and I kind of doubt that that would go that.
Okay.
It probably is more, but this is a extremely huge um build, you know, like this is not just like a landing page that has like a cool animation. Like there's many pages to this, many different features, there's a store, you know, like all kinds of stuff there.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to find it here where I saw that. I feel like it was a YouTube video, but well, regardless of the figure.
Yeah,
I obviously he invested a lot of money into this, or his team did at least. And yeah, like there were lots of corners that could be cut that weren't. It is, I mean, it's a work of art, right?
yeah,
It really is, like, it demonstrates that investment. So my follow-up question to you then is, in terms of the prediction that, 2026, we're going to see the pendulum swing away from just cookie cutter websites to things that are a little more bespoke as that differentiator.
yeah,
Um, what would you say would be the business case for that? Like, how are companies going to explain the ROI? Like, what? Talk to me about that.
yeah. That's a hard one, right? Because like
Yeah,
for a lot of people, spending 50 grand on a website, you're never gonna see that back, right? Um, honestly, I always bring it back to like it being like a brand play. Like not versus like, oh, he's selling more t-shirts or whatever, but more of like this is just a huge extension of his brand. And if he's spending however much every single year advertising, if your company is spending money on, I don't know, commercials or billboards or whatever, this is certainly a good avenue to have an extension of your brand. I don't know, past that, how do you do the ROI on this type of thing?
mhm.
It's a tricky thing, right? Because design is a really hard thing to have ROI on, because you certainly could have put this all as just text on a page
Yeah.
and you would have gotten the same information across. And if that's what you're trying to do, I don't know that there is an ROI for that. But if it's a brand play and you're really trying to like cement this is who we are, then I think that that's where you got to look.
I feel that. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with this. Oh, and by the way, I found it's Life of Juarez is the YouTube channel that said it was a $50,000 website. Unless I'm
Okay.
there's a lot of zeros there. Yeah, I think I'm getting that right. Anyways, so we can neither confirm nor deny that that is the amount that the team spent on there. But yeah, so I am suspect of this. But I think it's interesting. 2025, there was a lot of investment put into design in terms of dev tools. So I'm thinking of like Figma IPOing. We also saw, just a lot of movement. I mean, I'm a big Canva user, and so Canva added a bunch of features. And then, yeah, Nano Banana, mentioned them already. So
Yeah.
there does just seem to be a lot of energy put into design. Clearly, it's something that we all want. It makes us feel good. Uh, but I'm concerned about this. And I think part of it is like I mentioned being on an interactive team myself. And so I've seen what good designers can do. Like the designers
Yeah.
that I worked with were so talented. They did stuff I wouldn't even think of. They had such a huge corpus of experience, and they really created some killer stuff that, like, if it was just left to the front end engineers, like that would never have happened. I mean, God, the head of our engineering department had this like basically an HTML hyperlink website that she would always share when she was like, this is the perfect website, right? It was just like
Yeah.
the ugliest thing you've ever seen, right? So so you definitely don't want the engineers to be in charge of this. I feel like we could all agree with that. But also, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just hear a lot of like concern about that. It's a tough one, Wes. I'm nervous for my friends. We're all worried about losing our
Who are
jobs.
designers. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a tricky thing because like as someone who doesn't like make his money for design, I
yeah,
love that people use Canva now because every single thing that like our teachers make, every single like church picnic poster, um it's decent. And it's the same thing with like the shad cn components, is that like we went from like this like Microsoft Word typed up thing to like half decent looking things, and it conveys the information, and I'd argue that's better than the alternative. um but then there's that like whole another level, which is like, yeah, that's your table stakes. And now how do you push that even further to get good design and make a beautiful site and all of that? So yeah, it is a very tricky thing. And especially when you're trying to convince somebody who's holding the money of like,
yeah,
hey, no, like I know that you just like typed into that box and something half beautiful came out, but like that's not the end of it, right? There's UI, there's interaction, there's brand, there's so much more to good design than just like what it looks like.
for sure. Thinking of Canva too. Have you used Affinity? That was
Uh
they bought that last year.
yeah, I was an Affinity user like years ago. I tried to make the
Okay.
switch from Adobe products. I ultimately canned that and didn't, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of exciting what they're doing there.
Yeah, I have not tried it yet. I'm a basic person using the regular Canva stuff. Background remover. I don't know. I need to branch out, I guess. Although I will say my experience with their AI and the chat features has not gone well. I'm kind of written those off. There's yeah, I think that was maybe pushed to market a
Yeah,
little too quickly.
I think people realize as well when like when everybody's using Canva and you see something that's not done in Canva and you go, oh,
Oh.
how did you do
Yes.
that? That's beautiful. I like that. That makes me feel good. Like our like
Yeah.
basis for what is good and what you enjoy changes. And that's why people are always trying to just come out with these big shockers, like the
Yeah.
Lando Norris website. That goes, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. That's sick. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, if we're talking about beautiful websites, do you think there's also an impulse to make 2026 the year of like weird web experiences? Everyone talks nostalgically about the old days, the old web, right? I mean, is that part of this conversation?
Yeah. Weird is kind of cool, but also just like when you come upon an app that is slightly different, just shows that there was some thought and care put into this thing. I can't tell you how
Hmm.
quickly I close apps when I can just feel that this thing is vibe coded. You know, I don't trust it. If it's got like the purple gradients and these buttons and like all the same stuff that you're seeing all day long,
Hmm.
there's an element of trust that is just immediately lost when you're on these things. So you land on something now, and if it interacts, it acts not necessarily interaction, but if it just looks a little bit different and catches my eye, I immediately think in my head, oh, there's people behind this. This is actually an app that I can use
Yeah.
and not just something that somebody vibe coded and spit out, and it's not going to be working in 6 months, or I'm going to upload my bank statements to it or something crazy like that.
Yeah, yeah. I know when you say you don't trust it, I'm like, is this just like a matter of like, well, I'm choosing between two products and this one looks like their marketing website was not vibe coded, or is it like, yeah, it's going to steal my credit card?
Yeah. And same thing with like even like model photos on websites.
Hmm.
Um, if I'm looking at like a shirt and it's clear that they've used AI to put the shirt on somebody, I think in some regard that's okay, but then in other regards, I just immediately am like, oh, this is probably some print on demand scam company, you know, or they're drop shipping some crap to me.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's something that's not like that, I go, oh, it's a legitimate company. They put some care into that, so it's it's a delicate balance.
Yeah, such a good point. I just watched a demo video today for a product, and it was so clear that the individuals in this like fake company were all just AI generated people, like just the lighting, the whole thing.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I was like, this is disappointing. I'm already bored. Like
yeah.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, it's exciting for a couple months until everybody starts doing it, and then again, our
Yeah.
baselines change.
And I actually think that you have implicitly pointed to that ROI thing. Like you are more likely to spend money at an e-commerce site because it appears like somebody put some thought into it, that they actually hired models to try on the shirt, whatever.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. I feel like there's this move away from the, I don't know, the uncanny valley feel of these AI experiences, perfect as they are. So yeah, it's almost this combination of like design and
yeah,
weird and a move away from what perfection, beauty,
yeah,
like
yeah.
everyone looks like an anime character. I don't know.
TikTok did that, right? Like
Oof.
TikTok, everybody turned into these like beautifully presented camera on a tripod, like professional mic, and then brands caught on, and then brands started doing that. So what happened to TikTok was that people are holding mics with their hand, they have a shaky camera, it's lower
Hmm.
quality, they're not framing it correctly, and now we're at a point now where people are um like intentionally eating to make it look like they are like less prepared, you know, like people are trying to fake fake being less prepared and things like that, and it's just this pendulum that's just keeps swinging back and forth because people are looking for more real and raw.
Wow.
um because like I said, I can do it within the first like 10 milliseconds of a TikTok where if I hear the voice or I can see like an animation come on screen, I immediately swipe because I'm just like, somebody's trying to sell me something here, you know? Yeah, but if
Yeah.
someone's like standing in their garage holding their phone, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna check this out. This is real.
Yeah, I am mercifully not in the TikTok, so I don't use that as my use case of choice. But yeah, that is
Yeah,
such a good example though. So thank you for sharing that. It's so hard because we're living in this post ZERP economy. We're hearing about layoffs. Things kind of seem out of control. It's our friends that have labored at the top of the stack that feel particularly vulnerable. And yet it's these experiences that are so relatable and that are like the first thing that folks are going to see. And it's moving so quick. And so you want the smartest minds on this particular problem. But yeah, all these real world examples. I think what's interesting to me, you mentioned Tailwind CSS already, sort of in passing. So like when we think about, I don't know if you saw, Adam had posted this thing about not wanting, the LLMs to be able to read, the docs there, because he was explaining that in order to, he closes PR because he wants folks to go to the docs so that they then, buy the paid product.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. That's how
I'm
his business
describing that
works
pretty
on
well.
traffic to the website. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, folks are mad, whatever. So I can link it in the show notes here. But I think what was interesting to me about it is that when I did my first forays into vibe coding, every little app that I created not only had, some framework, but also would always use Tailwind CSS rather
Hmm.
than just vanilla, CSS, JavaScript, HTML. Lately, I have seen that not be the case all the time. But it was fascinating to me that he would say that, because I feel like all vibe coded apps were using way more libraries than was necessary. A stupid little app, you could totally do it just using primitives, and it defaulted to these like heavy ways of doing
Yeah.
something simple. So yeah, it seemed like there was this disconnect here. But all of that is to say, people are concerned about who's making money today, especially folks who are laboring in the front end space, right? Folks who are thinking about these, the visual experiences, the UI.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what was your take on all that?
Uh, Adam's a good friend of mine, so like I've been talking to him about this for, I don't know, a
What's the tea then?
couple
Here,
months
hit us.
beforehand. But it's just that it's that like it's such a weird thing that he's created this thing that is incredibly successful and it's just rocketing up in usage.
Yeah,
And because of the way that people use it via LLMs, they're not visiting the docs anymore. And that was the business, to be able to pay the people to work on it, right? You sell a
right.
certain number of those people a premium product, you make the money, you can pay more people to work on the open source project. Um, so thankfully, like Syntax sponsor $50,000. Many companies kind of stood up and go, "Oh wow, like yeah, this is kind of a problem that like this main thing that we do is maybe not able to be worked on because
Yeah,
we ate its lunch." Um, so it's a frustrating thing because like a lot of like the other comments were on it were like, this is just not a business that can work in the AI space. But like I think that
right.
there's a lot of stuff like that like my whole business was just like I wrote hundreds of blog posts over the year. I put tons of content out over the years, and it's the LLMs just gobbled it all up, and now people don't necessarily need that. So it's a frustrating thing. And I don't know what the answer to all of that is. Like can we give Tailwind a penny every time that it generates like 1,000 glasses or something crazy like that? Like this token, can we build it in? Certainly people have tried that in the past with BAT, like basic attention token, where like yeah, you have running an ad blocker, but you're putting $10 every month into your browser, and then based on the sites that you visit, we're gonna divvy that $10 up to the different people. Maybe that'll work. Like journalism is another really big one as well. If people are blocking ads for this type of thing. So maybe that is a way down it. We will see. But I think there's a lot of questions around these companies stealing all of this stuff. Not to say that it will ever stop. And like I use it myself as well, and I think these tools are great, but it's crazy that they're able to just gobble it all up and then give it to you for free.
It feels like there's a lesson there about nice to haves versus things that you can't get away from paying for, um, servers space, for instance. And I feel like it's going to come at the folks who are working at the top of the stack first. And I'm worried about that. I am, because I also want this to be the year, Wes. This is it. This is design's year.
Yeah.
We're going to make it a thing. And I don't know. I want all the pieces in place to make it happen. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up. Where are you directing folks to follow you? I've mentioned your fantastic podcast already, your YouTube channel. Yeah, where are you sharing your musings these days?
Yeah, I either wesbos.com, links to all my stuff. I'm on Twitter at wesbos, Instagram, TikTok. We have the Syntax YouTube channel. I have my own personal YouTube channel. So those are probably the best spots right now. But I'm around. You'll see me.
All right, fantastic. Been a pleasure speaking with you today. Again, my guest is Wes Bos from Syntax. My name is Kate Holterhoff. I'm a senior analyst at RedMonk. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and review the Monkcast on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching us on RedMonk's YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, and engage with us in the comments.